Hello, kindergarten. I have been reading you all my wonderful Curious George books, but this one and the last two I read you were the most special because they are connected to our social studies unit that we've been learning about. Last week, I read you Curious George Visits the Fire Station, and that had the community member in it that helps protect us in our community. And the week before that, I read you the story Curious George Visits the Ice Cream Shop. And that book was about a community member with Curious George that provides a service to us, that ice cream store worker. Today, I bring you Curious George Visits the Dentist. And don't forget, this is the front cover, this is the back cover, this is the spine. On the front cover, the big words say the title. And the author and illustrator's name is on there too. The dentist is a community member that cares for us. And that is what I will read to you about today. George was a good little monkey and always very curious. When he visited his neighbor, Mrs. Ross, he was especially curious about her gleaming basket of fruit. He took an apple, and she looks like she's saying, "Stop." That bright red apple on top looked too perfect to be true. And it was. George bit into it and discovered that it was hard and sticky and not sweet. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Ross. "George, that's not a real apple. That's made of wax." George's tooth began to hurt. "You should always ask before eating something, George," said the man with the yellow hat. Boys and girls, Curious George has a huge problem. He thought that basket of fruit was real fruit, and it's not. It was wax, and now he has a hurt tooth. So I'm making a prediction. If I have a problem with my tooth, I'm going to go see the dentist, a community worker that cares for me. By the time he went to bed that evening, George's tooth was less sore. But the next morning, his tooth was wobbly. Oh, oh. His mouth felt so strange that George couldn't even eat his breakfast. It was his favorite pancake breakfast, and he couldn't even eat it. Look how worried he's feeling. "We should see the dentist, George," said the man with the yellow hat. "She can make sure that tooth of yours is all right." So he called the dentist. The man explained that the dentist was a doctor for your teeth. But George didn't want anyone to touch his teeth. What if it hurt? I see you on the other side of the screen. Some of you right now are saying, "I don't like to go to the dentist either." George walked along the path to the dentist office with his friend, his steps getting slower and slower until he ran away from the man in the yellow hat to pick a daisy. That's not what he's supposed to do, boys and girls. "That's very pretty, Daisy," said the man chasing after George. "But we have an appointment to get to, and we can't be late. You'll be a good little monkey, won't you?" George nodded. He always wanted to be good. "Hey, Riley, this makes me think of you. You just went to the dentist last week. I hope you were a good little girl when you went to the dentist and you didn't run away from your mom when she was taking you to the office." The waiting room was a welcoming place. There were lots of things to see and do. One by one, the young patients were called away by a woman in a white suit. George watched them go through a red door, each holding onto a grown-up's hand. So they each take their turn going in. One frightened boy was carried by his mother. George was glad he wouldn't have to see the dentist all by himself. He had the man with the yellow hat with him. "George, you're next," the woman in the white announced. George was sad to put down his book, but he was also a little curious about where the children were going when they went past that red door. Was there a play area on the other side? Boys and girls, when the dentist calls you back, is it to go to a playroom? I don't think so. I think it's going to be the dentist office with a I'm right. The exam room was not filled with toys, but it was still very interesting. There was a sink and a long chair laying down. There was a stool for the dentist and a light above the chair. George was curious. Why are there two faucets in the room? One, two. Hello, George. I am Dr. Wang. It's nice to meet you, she said. Why don't you lay down and let me take a look at your teeth? George saw a row of silver dental exam tools on the counter. They were long, shiny, and some were pointy. He hid behind the man. George is feeling a little nervous because of those tools he sees. Sometimes I feel nervous at the dentist, but I know that they are going to help take care of me because that is what a citizen that cares for us does. George, would you like me to try out the chair first? The man asked. Great idea, said Dr. Wang. So the man with the yellow hat hopped in the chair first to show George it was okay. The man laid down. Open your mouth wide. Say, ah. The dentist shined the big light down into the man's mouth. She took out a small white instrument just so she could take a closer look at his teeth. This is a mouth mirror, George. George watched. It didn't look too scary. She was just looking in his mouth with a mirror. Next, I'm going to count your teeth, said Dr. Wang. She picked one of the sharp, pointy tools. This one is an explorer. It helps me touch and count your teeth. 1, 2, 3, 4. The man exclaimed, ouch! Uh-oh, the dentist said. George ran right out the door. Boys and girls, why is he running out the door? That's right, Caden. He's running out the door because he heard the man scream and he thinks the man is hurt and he doesn't want to get hurt in that dentist chair. He left the exam room and scurried down the hall. He ran and ran and ran. There were so many doors, he didn't know which one was the way out. He tried one door and walked into another exam room. A monkey, said the little girl. She cried and jumped off the exam room chair in excitement as George backed out of the room. The girl was excited to see a monkey. He continued down the hall, opening the doors and disturbing the patients. In one room, he scared a little boy from the reception area who was crying. George had an idea. He jumped onto a table and began juggling packs of dental floss. That's crazy. Kind of reminds me of how he juggled the baseballs last week in the Firehouse book. The little boy stopped crying and smiled. That reminds me of the Firehouse book too. When all the boys and girls were scared of the fire, he started throwing those baseballs and he made them feel happy. Next, George leaped over to the sink in the middle of the room. He pushed a button and the nearby water jet spurted spraying water all over the room. George squirted water into the boy's mouth and into his own mouth. That's going to make a mess. Next, George decided to switch to the overhead lamp, but the lamp tumbled over, splash, and George fell to the floor. The boy clapped, but uh-oh. Dr. Wang stood in the doorway. George, you naughty little monkey. What a mess you've made in my dental office. About what's going to happen next. This monkey was the only one who could get my son Tyler to stop crying, said the boy's mother. Said Dr. Wang. It does look like we have some eager patients. And if it weren't for you, George, I wouldn't have found the cavity in your friend's mouth. Boys and girls, turns out I need to have a filling, said the man with the yellow hat. Come on, George, let's both get our teeth checked out. So it's a good thing the man with the yellow hat got in that dental chair. He was just there to test it out to show George that everything was okay, but when he got in that chair, the dentist found what? That's right, a cavity. Now the dentist can take care of it because that's her job. The dentist takes care of us, helps fix problems in our mouth. As soon as Dr. Wang looked into George's mouth, she laughed. Why, George, all you have is a loose tooth. A loose tooth sounded worrisome to George. It's going to fall out soon. There's a new permanent tooth coming right in behind it. Looks like you've been doing a good job brushing your teeth. So when he bit into that wax apple, it just made him have a wiggly tooth. Like I bet a lot of you have a wiggly tooth, or you're waiting to have a wiggly tooth. So your baby teeth can fall out and the new adult teeth can grow up. George jumped up in his chair and he did. He brushed his teeth every night and every morning, 2 times a day. Keep on brushing and don't eat too many sweets. Don't eat too much candy. Don't drink too much juice, the dentist reminded him. You want your teeth to be in good shape for the tooth fairy. That's what you guys want too, boys and girls. George waved goodbye to his new friends, and he went home with a new toothbrush, some new dental floss, and some directions for what to do with his loose tooth. He's carrying it in a bag right there. I get that from the dentist when I go. I get a little baggie with new toothbrush, new toothpaste, and some dental floss. Maybe he should not bite into any more hard apples. He decided that night he didn't mind going to the dentist at all. That night, he did find a red apple. And he bit into it for dessert. And guess what happened, boys and girls? It made his wiggly tooth come all the way out. And now he could put his tooth right under his pillow. Why is he putting it under that pillow, boys and girls? That's right, Braden. That's right, Levi. He's putting it under his pillow so the tooth fairy can come. The next morning, he woke up and he found a special coin. When Mrs. Ross came to check on George that afternoon, George proudly showed her that coin the tooth fairy had left him under his pillow. Mrs. Ross laughed and said, "Well, that was a quick way to lose a tooth." I hope you enjoy what the tooth fairy brought you. The end, boys and girls. This book reminded me of how I like when the tooth fairy comes to visit, and it also reminded me how the dentist is not a very scary place. A dentist is a person who cares for us in our community, and they want to help care for our teeth. So don't be scared when you go to the dentist. Just take a deep breath and let them look in your mouth with that mirror. Let them count your teeth. Let them clean your teeth. All right, boys and girls, off you go to special areas. I hope you enjoyed my Curious George book. See you later, alligator. See you at closure at 3 o'clock when you're done at special areas.